All right, let's see. I should be live now. Okay, it says something with stream health, but I'll just check on my device. Okay, right. Finally, I'll just minimize this inception kind of thing. So as said in this video, we're gonna be doing a live coding session, you can say, on React, taking a React application from zero to production. And if time allows, I'm gonna um, discuss how we can deploy this application on, let's say, Google Cloud, using one of the instances provided by Google Cloud. So let's just begin in a moment. Let me see. Okay. Right. So let's start. And by the way, this is my first time doing live streaming, so that's why there were a couple of the last two streams kind of were broke or something. But I think this one should be doing fine. So let's begin. So, okay, I'm just gonna go to my desktop. I do already have created a little bit of test project with React, which eventually what we're gonna do in this live stream. But what I want you guys to do, you can either just watch the live stream, see how I'm doing it, or if you want to follow along, you can do that too. Adjust my seat here, and okay. So essentially, what we would be creating is a simple React application. I'm going to show you which one. So if I do npm start here, we're going to see that this application, I think it runs on port 1337. Yep. So this is basically a tic-tac-toe game from the React documentation itself. And we're going to create this in React. Not really React, I'm just going to copy paste the major portion from the documentation itself, but I'm going to show you what everything means and how we can set it up. Right, so this is our game, winner is X clearly. So let's start afresh with a new project. I'm going to open a new tab in here and say, let's say live stream. Why not live stream? Okay, so first things first, what we need is we need to initialize this project with the npm. npm is a package manager, obviously you know that. So I'm going to initialize this with an npm init-y, which creates something known as package.json file for us, right? And if we take a look here inside package.json, nothing fancy here, just some name, version, description, stuff like that. All right, the next thing is to set up a React project, we need certain dependencies like React itself, React DOM. Then we need Babel for the ES6, ES6 to ES5, plus the JSX transformation. Then we would need Webpack to test it, bundle it, running a dev server, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do, instead of learning all of that, what you could do is you could just Google that, or you can just pick it up from this package.json I have. And by the way, I would be uploading this whole repo at the end of this live stream on GitHub too, so that you can view it. So basically, these are the dependencies we would need for a minimal React project, right? Without create React app, obviously. So let's install them. And what we can do is basically just copy these all. And right here inside package.json file, I'm going to paste them. So what this means is basically Express is needed for the server, right? So we need Express for hosting or for sending our React application to the client. Then for React, obviously we need it because we are working with React. React DOM is again used by React for working with DOM and stuff. For dev dependencies, these are the dependencies we do not really need once our React application is ready to be shipped, right? And it's ready to be bundled and all that stuff. So Babel, as I said, transforms the app, and CSS loader is basically used to load CSS into our JSX, which we're going to see in a moment. Path is for resolving stuff, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and do an npm install. Because we have already added these dependencies inside our package.json, I think we can just do npm install and we'll install all the dependencies we have, right? So actually, I don't have my spare monitor right now with me, so I can't open like the YouTube stats in a new tab. Otherwise, I would be able to reply to you guys as well at the same time. But let's just say, so even I got a couple of mails that I'm live, but those links would not work because I tried to just go live without actually realizing. Anyway. Okay, so meanwhile it's installing, let me just check. We have 13 viewers, cool. And livestream is running a little behind. Okay, so meanwhile it's installing, I can reply you guys from my device, but I think I would just need to change my account here. Please feel free to ask any questions. If we have a moment like this, like something is installing, I would be taking up questions inside the live stream itself. And let's just see. Okay. Please feel free. All right, so we are done here. And I have also sent a text. Right, so once this is done, what we have is a node modules folder, which obviously contains stuff which we installed. Second thing is we need to configure Webpack. Now what Webpack is, it's basically a module bundler, which bundles your scripts, your CSS, your assets, basically. So what I'm going to do is start with a webpack.config.json file. And sorry, it's JS, not JSON, right? And I realized it by the icon, right? But anyway, so what we need to do now is configure this file in such a way that when we say that Webpack, hey Webpack, run our server, it would actually take up this configuration, find a file which is our entry point, and start from there. So think of it like you can say a module bundler which needs us to say where to start looking for the main file, right? So what we need to do now is, again, I'm going to just show you what this config.json looks like, and we're going to pretty much use the same thing. So what we need to do here is just take a look at this. So I'm just going to keep these configurations same because you do not really need to learn them. You're just going to write them from the documentation, and then you're going to customize it later on by yourself. So what happens here is that because we installed path, you can see here the path module. So we have our path module available here. Then we do two things. We create a source folder, we create a compiled folder. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to create a folder front end, which contains all of our front end logic, that is our React logic, right? Inside this, I'm going to create a folder named source and another folder named compiled. And by the way, this is the structure I follow on CodeDAM's official websites as well. So you can say that this is a reliable structure. So what happens now is source is the folder which basically contains all the files, all the components, everything, just like how would you program a normal React application. But compiled is the place where Webpack spits out whatever it has done and compiled your assets and stuff into, right? Because this is a live stream, I'm going to keep it simple and short. I'm not really going to get into a lot of details of other assets like fonts and images and stuff like that. So we're just going to keep it to JavaScript and CSS. So what happens now is our entry point. So we need an entry point. Obviously, we need to say Webpack, hey Webpack, I need you to start looking for my assets from this particular file. So what do we say in that? Well, we point our entry file as bundle home, which is a source, which is an index.js file inside a source folder. So inside my source folder, I'm going to create an index.js file, just like we say, right? So this is our entry point inside Webpack. So here's what we're going to write with React. So I'm going to say import React from React, and I'm going to say import React DOM from React DOM, right? And all our, React logic goes here now, right? So the next thing for Webpack is output. Output is obviously where it spits out everything. I'm going to say output has a path of compiled assets. I'm going to tell you why that is the case in a moment. Then file name is JS, that is just regular JavaScript, which creates a JavaScript folder. It's not a file name. Obviously, you cannot have slashes in file names. And then this stands for whatever name it had. In our case, it's bundle home. Remember, the name here refers to bundle home and not to index.js, right? Then public path is again something which is related to how you're going to access this output file through your Webpack dev server. All right. The other things are basically, running this. How do we configure this dev server? Again, its public path is assets. These two needs to match, right? Then the port is something you wanted to run on. I'm going to change it to 1400, let's say. Index is the file which we want to serve. History API fallback, and I'm going to explain what this history API fallback is. But index.html is the file which we want our Webpack dev server to serve. Now, why this is important? This is important because when you're not using Webpack dev server, you're gonna need to configure this on your Node backend, which again we're gonna see in a moment. So I'm gonna configure HTML5 file here, and I'm just gonna say simple tic-tac-toe, right? That goes like that. And inside body, what we need is obviously a root element. And basically, this is the root element of React, where React renders this whole virtual DOM and stuff. And finally, we're going to need a script src of assets JS bundle home.js. Now, why is that the case? Because, inside our Webpack configuration file, we said that we want to name the file, the output file, as js/name.js, right? So this is how Webpack would spit it out. Assets, because its public path is assets, right? And obviously we place a file in assets as well. Then JS, then bundle home.js. All right, so once we have done this much, I think we should be able to run it. We just need a Babel RC file. What Babel RC does is that it would allow your, not really your browser, but what it would do is it would convert these imports and stuff by requiring them on the fly and basically convert these imports into something which your browser can understand. Right, so if I take a look at what we did inside our index.html, you can see we did a similar thing. inside Babel RC, you need some presets, right? These presets are how Babel uses, how Babel knows what it has to do. So we're going to copy these presets again inside our Babel RC. And what it tells us is basically that whenever something is being done with Babel, we need to apply these two presets for sure. The first one is environment preset, and the second one is React, right? I don't know if it stands for environment, but I think it should, right? The second one is React. Basically, it contains all the information how to handle React applications, stuff like this React DOM things. So if we take a look inside what I did with the index.js file here, you can see pretty much the same stuff. And now, obviously, yeah, we need to do a React DOM.render here, React DOM.render, and here goes our component. So for now, I'm just going to create a component. Let's say hello world is a component which is, let's say, just returns me a div of, or let's just say a p containing hello world, right? So I'm going to say hello world is a component, and where it should render, well, get element by ID, and what did we do here? We created a root, right? So we have our root here. All right. So once we have done this, once we have our Webpack configuration and our dev server is ready, so this history API fallback, yeah. So what this does is basically this, what happens is with React, you can have multiple routes. Like you can have pages like, home, then you can have about, you can have contact, stuff like that. So when you're working on a dev server, you want all of these pages to serve a single index.html file from where React picks up that, yeah, okay, I'm cool now. I know what to serve at contact, what to serve at home, what to serve at about. But on a real server, what you would need is pretty much similar to this. You need to send the index.html file to all the requests hitting at these endpoints, right? So this is what basically History API fallback is doing. It is sending this index.html file to all the routes, whatever we are requesting from the server. All right, so for now, what we have is, I think we're pretty much good here. I'm going to explain this module section in a while, but let us see. For package.json, what we can do is say, instead of this test script, we're going to create a start script, and I'm going to say Webpack dev server, right, which essentially starts our dev server. And I don't think we are missing anything, but still, okay. So let's just take a look. I'm going to do an npm start here, and let's see if we have missed something. Okay. Right. So, okay, it compiled successfully. Let's see. It should be up on 1400. That's right. So if I do 1400 here, we see that we get a simple tic-tac-toe and a hello world. Now we know this is a React project, obviously, because we are first of all working on it. And secondly, you can take a look at the files and stuff. So we are working right now. Our Webpack dev server is live with our hello world and stuff. And yeah, basically we have set it up a React application from scratch as of now. So what we need to do next is basically create this game, which was tic-tac-toe game, right? So what we need is a nice little structure, file structure, which we can call. So I'm going to go ahead and create a folder called components. Components basically allows us to, group everything separately. So for example, if you're running a website, you would have components regarding header, you would have components regarding sidebar, footer, stuff like that, which are independent from each other usually, and can be updated, can be reused rather. So I'm gonna go ahead and create a component, let's say home for now, to just test things, and I'm gonna say index.js. Again, I'm gonna say import React from React. I'm gonna create a class called, let's just export it as well. Export default class home extends react.component. It needs a render method which just returns us div with the hello from home, right? So now instead of like doing this, what I'm gonna do is say import home from components and home, right? And I'm gonna render home here. Save, take a look. You see that we should get home here, obviously hello from home. Perfect. So now what essentially we need to do is create that board and game components, right? And obviously before doing that, I'm just gonna import some styles as well so that we can just confirm that our styles are also working. Styles.css, right? And obviously we need to create that file, styles.css. And I'm gonna come to that how this is all working, don't worry. Hit save. I'm gonna say, let's just give this div a class name, and I'm gonna say my paragraph. Now, the thing with JSX is you need to give it a class name. The class will not really work because this is a reserved keyword, right? We are using it here. So you need to give it a class name attribute. I'm gonna say my paragraph has a color of red. It says, take a look. You see that we get hello from home in red. So that means our CSS is also working. But how the hell is all of this happening? So now we would go back to webpack.config and we're going to see at this module section. So what Webpack does is it takes certain rules. Whenever it encounters a JS or a JSX file, which you're not really using, we're not using JSX file extension, but we are using JSX, right? So what it does is it uses something known as Babel loader. Babel loader is something we installed as a dependency here, you can see, right? Which in turn calls Babel core. Babel core in turn uses our two presets, Babel env and Babel react, to actually turn our React code into something which your browser can understand, right? So what happens is since we have index.js as this file, as our home file, when Webpack sees it, it says, hey, Babel loader, tell me what I have to do with this. So Babel loader runs all of those presets and stuff just I just told you and returns you pretty much, if I can show you, returns you a bunch of garbage, right? You can see it's kind of garbage for you right now, but this is what Babel, this is not completely what Babel does. Webpack also does a lot of stuff in there, but you get the idea. So Babel converts it into from JSX to ES6 to ES5 to stuff like that, right? So the next thing is with CSS or SCSS, we can actually remove this as well. It doesn't matter because we are not using Sass right now. With CSS, what happens is that when Webpack sees the CSS file, so it says, hey, what do I have to do with it? So it goes to its Webpack configuration, sees that, well, the developer has written, if there's a CSS file found, first of all, run style loader, then second of all, run CSS loader. So what these two does is, first of all, it extracts the CSS from the style file, right? And then it injects it into style tag inside your DOM. Again, what's happening? The style loader extracts the CSS from this file, which is basically your styles.css file. It extracts all these styles, and then it places these styles into the style tag. If I can show you, this is the style tag which this loader places, right? So this is pretty much the role of these two loaders. All right, so with that being clear, I think we are good with our Webpack configuration file, right? And what we can do now is actually move on to implement these two components, right? So I'm going to copy this code. I'm going to tell you what it does pretty soon, and create an index.js file inside this. So this is our board, right? Hit save. I'm going to copy the game file as well, which is, this is the code you can find from the documentation of React site, right? But I just did it myself so that we don't have to waste a lot of time there. It's safe. So we have our board and game file with us now. I can delete the home component. We also need some CSS files for this style.css. Right. So for the game, what we have is these many styles, and for the board, what we have is this much, right? All right. Okay, so now what we have is basically these two components, which consist of some JS code and some CSS code, right? So board is something which actually draws a board and allows end user to play the tic-tac-toe game, right? The game then uses this board, uses some logic, and does everything. So I'm not really going to go into how this code works, because remember, this is not a tutorial for JavaScript. This is a tutorial for React. So I'll just go on to some methods and stuff, what they are doing. So let me just see. So what we're going to do now is just get game from components game and render game itself here, right? So now if we take a look inside game, what would happen when we do this? Once we do this, what happens is React searches for the render method for the game, right? Constructors would run, stuff would happen, but React would eventually search for the render method. So everything this happens, right? So React finally gets this return. So we get a class name of game, class name of game board, and actually I can just bring this here. So what's happening? Okay, I think, yeah. So if you take a look here, actually this might make more sense, right? So what's happening here is so React takes a look. Okay, you want me to draw a div with a class name of game. Here you go. There's this div, right? Then you want a game board. Here you go. Well, now inside this game board, we render this board, which is a component which we created. So it looks into this board, it gets to its render method, and we have this div inside this game board, which has 3 rows, board row, board row, board row, just like what we said React to do. Then we render this component with this render, and then the ID, you can say the ID of the square 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, which further calls this method, which returns. You can say this is not really a component. You can say it is a component, but it's really a function, and functions are components essentially. So yeah, this is a component which returns us with a button with a class name of square, which on click, what it does is it does what the props of on click says. So what that is, well, take a look. Well, let's take a look. So once we are creating this board, we say that on click, what should happen, whatever the ID of that square is, the handle click method should get that ID and do something with it. So essentially what we are saying is whenever we click on this board, we want something to happen with the ID of that board. So 0, I call this handle click method with ID as 0, which is I as 0, right? So what we do here is basically some manipulation. Once we have the ID with us of the handle click, we create a history object, the history variable, which just gets the array of elements, you can say, inside our state of history, right? So our history consists of this array, which holds our squares, right? We get the history of what actions we have done so far. Then we get current, then we get some squares. We calculate the winner. We just calculate the winner using logic that if there's a row which consists of a same symbol, or there's a column if there's a diagonal, stuff like that. So I'm not really going to get into the logic how this works, but you should, get the idea by seeing the code. And I'm going to post the code, so don't worry about that. Right, and so on. We're just going to update stuff here. Right, so jump2 is another method which essentially is used when you play the game. So you see, so when you call this method, it's going to use jump2 here, right? So it just sets your state and stuff. And obviously set state is a method to update the states. You should know that, right? So as of now, what we have is a working React app, I can say. A simple tic-tac-toe game. Which basically you can play. So I want X to win. So there you go. You see winner is X because we did a diagonal, right? So now what we can do is basically say that we want to deploy it on, let's say, Google Cloud. So how do we do that? Well, first of all, we need to create a server for us, right? Webpack dev server can only do so much for us. It can only create, it can only, enable live reload and options like that. I'm just going to close this test. It's creating some confusion. So here's our source code. Here's our Webpack dev server. Now, how do we remove this and actually create an actual server? Well, what I'm going to do now is just go to terminal and kill the Webpack dev server. Instead, I'm going to create another script which says build, right? And it's just going to be Webpack P. So what it does, it creates a build for us. Remember, the compiled folder is still empty because the Webpack dev server does not really create the assets and store them. It serves them from the memory because it's faster. But the build one would create that, right? So I'm just going to do npm run build, hit enter, and what we're going to see is that it runs webpack-p command, and according to that, what it does is it creates a nice little build for us. So let's see. So you can see that we have our build with us with our compiled folder consisting of assets and stuff, and you can obviously see this is all minified and performance optimized by a Webpack. So now what we need is an Express server. So it's time to create a server folder here, server, right? Which let's just say this is index.js, and I'm going to create an Express server here pretty quickly. And I'm going to finally say that my app is Express. And I'm going to say app.use. First of all, we need to serve the static assets. So I'm going to say assets. Assets is express.static. And we're going to need a path here because Express needs a path. and then I'm going to say path.resolve dir name, which gets us to our server directory, and then I'm going to say front end compiled, right, assets. So there we go. Now we are ready to serve our static assets. So next we need to serve all our requests to React, right? Remember what we did with the dev server was basically we just sent everything to this index.html using history API fallback. A similar thing we're going to do in Express with app.get star, that means any request, and I'm going to just say res.send file, and this would be again path.resolve dir name, which gets us to our server directory, and then back to index.html. There we go. Finally, I'm going to start listening to my Express server at, let's say, 1234, and just got a console log listening at 1234, right? So what we can do now is just go ahead, clear this a little, go to our server folder, and write node index.js. All right, so we get listening at 1234 pretty quickly because Express server does not really need a lot of time to spin up. And if I visit 1234, we should see that our React application loads successfully. And if you see, the bundle home.js file here is minified one. It's not like that big chunk of JavaScript which we saw earlier, because this is optimized build for React, right? And obviously the application still works just like usual. X is again the winner. Okay. So what I'm going to do next is basically upload this to a Google Cloud instance and see how we can deploy it. So right now, I'm using it on localhost 1234, but let's say I want to expose this app to the world. How would I do that? Well, you need to upload it to a server, right? And I'm going to go with Google Cloud. So let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say Google Cloud in here and go to Google Cloud, right? And what I'm going to do meanwhile is basically create a Git repository here. So I'm going to initialize it with Git in it. And before that, actually, let me just create a Git ignore. So I'm going to just say node modules, right? And what else? I think the rest is required. All right, so now we have a Git in it, a Git repository here, what we can do, and actually not here. Here. All right, so now we have an empty Git repository here. What we can do, actually I could just work with the VS Code terminal. Okay, anyway, I can say first, React project, kind of, right? And I can now just go ahead to GitHub. Meanwhile, we can just go to our Google Cloud Console. You could use AWS, it does not really matter, but I prefer Google Cloud. So what we want to do is, hey, I am logged out of GitHub. Okay, there you go. Okay, so I have to enter two-factor. I wish I have the app. Yeah, I do. So 584237. There you go. All right, so now I'm going to create a new repository here. And I'm just going to say live stream, GitHub, not really GitHub, but what is it? React production, right? And this is a repository for React project. I've code them, right? I'm gonna keep it public, create repository, and there you go. We have our nice little repository. I'm just gonna copy this. I hope this button is for copy, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and say git remote add origin with this thing, right? What it does, basically, it adds this repository as the one of the remote we can push and pull to. So I'm gonna just do origin master, push here, and there we go. So our work is at least live on GitHub for now, right? So the next thing we want to do is actually spin up a server which we can then use to publish our React application. So let's just work. And I'll just see some comments meanwhile if I can. I'm just gonna create an instance here. We just create a server for us, right? And I'm gonna say this is a live server test, right? I'm gonna go with minimal CPU because, well, I'm not going to give this instance anyway. I prefer Ubuntu, but you can pretty much go with anything. It does not really matter. Allow HTTPS traffic. There you go. Hit create. And once you have done this, it should be creating your live server test instance. Remember, you can use anything, AWS, anything, stuff like that. I'm using Google Cloud. So once it's done, you should get a IP address for this. And meanwhile, someone says, I'm just going to translate, why are you coding in the night? First of all, well, programmers do actually code at night all the time. And someone said, Shubham said, there's straight day, bro. Yeah, no, actually I'm in India, so it's night here. So yeah. Hello, can I send data from child to parent? Yes, obviously you can. Child to parent. Yes, you can, but in an indirect way. You have to call a method on the parent, which in turn uses changes the data of the parent. Yeah. So she Shikega says yes by using props. So yeah, that's kind of a way to do it. That's right. So anyway, now we have this IP address for the instance. So what I can do is just simply SSH into the server using my SSH key. You're gonna need to figure out how to do it yourself because I cannot really help you here. Okay, so we have a problem here. So it saves me something's changed for this. SSH. I think I have seen this error before, but I don't really remember how to fix this. Yeah. All right. So let's Google this. How we're gonna fix this? So let's see. And obviously, make sure to make Stack Overflow your best friend. Although I just opened DigitalOcean, but okay. So we're gonna delete the key using SSH keygen. Fair enough. Not really. We're gonna say 35 point whatever this is. Right. Now let's just try one more time. And yes, it passes. Perfect. So now we are into the server, right? So once we are in the server, what we want to do first of all is set up npm and node, right? Both of them are not there. So a nice little hack, first of all, is to add get of update. So to get the updated repositories. A nice little hack I really follow all the time to set up node and npm is basically setting up npm first and node later. And I'm going to show you how this works. So I'm going to do a sudo apt-get install npm, which gets us a very old version of npm 3 point something, but it's fine, it works. So let's fetch and meanwhile we can again look at some comments. Where do you learn it? By doing, essentially. That's always the answer. You always learn stuff by doing, right? And by the way, if you missed it, I'm from India, so it's night here. Right. So it takes some time to set up, but it's okay, it's worth the effort. Can you please explain how we can pass data from one component to another? I think we can use Redux and context. Okay, Redux is a very simple way to do that, and context is the API provided to do that as well. I think I can show that, but I'm just gonna keep it for a separate video because right now it's gonna break the flow. But if you want to do it with Redux, I don't think there should be a problem. Without Redux, it's a little bit challenging. But anyway, so let's just stick to deploying it online right now. So you see that I have npm installed, but what I want to do now is install Node. So for that, what I'm going to do is install a Node package without Node, which is N. N is a version manager for Node, which essentially would allow us to install Node. So what I'm doing here is installing a Node package without Node, and then I'm going to do N latest. So what I did here, I got npm, then I got N, which is a Node version manager. And using it, I installed Node, which is Node 11.5, which we have installed. And now I'm going to install npm install global npm. And not really this one, I need the latest one, right? So we're going to get the latest one. Okay, so we're going to take a look. We get npm version 6.5, and finally, I'm going to just update my console. So we get npm v of 6.5, node v of 11.5. So that's a very easy way to set up node and npm on any Linux machine, right? Next thing is we need to actually, get on this, what we have, repository, right? So we need to get this right here. I'm going to git clone this one into, let's say, the same folder. We get into this. And now we're just going to do an npm install so that we get all our stuff. And I think we do not really need to do that. No, yeah, we need to do it because of the server. So that might take a little time. Okay. All right, we're gonna just ignore this warning for now, but you might want to fix it later on. I'm gonna go to server and say node index.js. Okay, it says me listening at 1, 2, 3, 4, but I'm gonna do a little change here. I'm gonna change this from 1, 2, 3, 4 to 80. Now, obviously, you should not do it on production like this, just like I'm doing, but you should be using something known as a reverse proxy, Nginx, in front of a process manager called PM2, because that's what essentially I do on CodeDam. So you have Nginx over PM2, and then it serves your node process. But right now, I'm not really going to set up Nginx because it might be time consuming, right? So I just opened it on port 80. So I'm just gonna say node of sudo node, and it still says 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's at port 80. All right. So now if we take a look, get this IP 1, 2, 3, 4, not really 1, 2, 3, 4, 80, or obviously the IP itself, right? So you see we have the simple tic-tac-toe game live on this IP address. You can visit it right now. It would be working because obviously I'm live streaming. So you see, this is how basically you take your application, your React application from zero. We started from zero, from nothing, to production by using Webpack, Babel, ES6, and stuff. So I think, yeah, it would have helped you if you have followed along the whole process. This would be obviously available as a video later on for you to watch. So if you're just confused at any step, feel free to go back and watch it again. So I'm just gonna keep this live stream here only, till here only, and I can just reply to some comments if we have anything. First, what I should learn: React Native. Shubham, it should be React because React Native is built for mobile and it uses React, but only for the UI layer part, right? And by UI layer, I just mean that using React, you design how your application looks like, but the functionality and all that stuff is basically just what you would expect to work as a normal application. So you should definitely go with React before React Native. React Native just uses React for a particular piece inside a particular puzzle, you can say. Right, so I don't think we have any more questions. I'm gonna get to Praveen's question, how we're gonna share data between components using Redux. It's pretty straightforward. I'm gonna get to that. And I think that's all for this live stream then. So thank you for watching if you have made it till end. And I'll see you then in some other video. Goodbye. And only if I can close it correctly.